video, I'll cover how I set up my AR-15 and a long-range configuration, all the components that I chose and why I chose them, and just some of the mindset that went into choosing the components that I chose and why I set them up the way that I did. So, let's do it.
Alright, we're going to start with the upper and lower receiver. This is a Sig Sauer M400, and I bought this thing about 8 years ago before I really knew anything about the AR-15 platform. If I could do it all over again, I'd buy a stripped upper and lower set, and that's what I've done since. And cost is an option, but mainly it's because when you build a rifle from a billet set, you're not left with a bunch of components that you don't really want and that you probably won't use. But aside from some proprietary options that manufacturers install in their uppers and lowers, part of the design, like the bolt catch pin being a screw like an AR-10, and this ambidextrous mag release they have here, which is pretty nice. There's really not a lot of performance differences that I've noticed between like a $60 lower and a mismatched upper and a $400 or $500 billet set. Not to say there isn't some small measure of gain between the two, but many shooters like myself probably won't notice it. So overall, this has been a really good receiver. There's a feature that I like, which is this detent in the lower under the grip that allows you to take up the slack between the upper and lower receiver to give a tighter fit. Alright, moving on to the stock. This is a Magpul UBR Gen 1. Now besides this thing looking amazing, this was the only stock that I could find that had the stability of a fixed stock and the versatility of a collapsible stock. Now I have pretty narrow cheekbones that are pretty high on my face, so I don't need any added cheek height adjustment that a lot of precision rifle shooters need to get a perfect cheek weld and eye relief. So this stock works very well for me. Alright, moving on to the barrel. The barrel is a Bravo Company SS 410 18-inch 1/8 right-hand twist with a rifle length gas system. The barrel's chambered in 5.56 NATO, and I used to shoot a lot of M855 before I reloaded, and I still shoot it sometimes, but I wanted that 5.56 chamber so I could shoot both, and it served me well. It's been a great barrel. With my hand loads, I get pretty consistent sub MOA. A good group for me is around 1/2 inch. Now there's currently some really good chambers on the market like Compass Lake Engineering, and I've heard a lot of good things about the 223 Wild, and with some heavy contours you can get a pretty good level of precision. A couple extra inches might be better for long range shooting, which I built this for, but this has served me really well, and it's a good middle ground for precision and versatility. This is a Seekins Precision adjustable gas block, no frills. Try to act like I can get a good camera angle on this thing. There's really not much to say about this gas block. It's a gas block. It's adjustable, and I can get the ejection pattern to around 3 o'clock. It's been very reliable. I like that I can adjust for suppressed and unsuppressed fire, and it can prevent some unnecessary wear on the components from overgassing, and my brass doesn't get damaged and beat up as much from excessive BCG velocity. But yeah, it's a gas block and it works good. Alright, the rail. This is an SLR Rifleworks Solo Lite 16.5 inch M-LOK. This rail is what I consider a top tier component. I love this rail. The tolerances, the fit, the finish, and the way it mounts on the barrel nut they provide. It's very good. It's light for such a long rail, and on a rifle like this, any way you can give yourself some weight savings, that's a good thing. I wanted the longest version they made in this because I wanted to mount my bipod as far forward on the rifle as I can get. That's what I prefer and feels the most stable. So overall, I love this rail. Alright, the charging handle. This is a Radian Raptor SD. I love this charging handle. It's the first ambi charging handle I've had, and I really like that. It's a lot more rigid than a Milspec charging handle, which is good if you're shooting your gun all day and it's dry. Sometimes if you torque it when you try to charge it, it'll bind a little bit. I haven't experienced any of that with this thing. The SD version has ports that'll direct gas down for suppressed fire. I have a PRI gas buster on my AR-10, and this works equally as well. Works very well for suppressed fire. My dirty bolt. This thing is a standard Milspec charging handle that
What did you say?
It came with the rifle. Not much to say about this thing. I wanted to change it for a long time, but the more I shot it and the more I worked on load development, the less I saw a need for it. I'm sure that a matched bolt and barrel would give me greater accuracy potential, but this rifle exceeds my own abilities to shoot groups, so until I'm a sub-quarter-minute shooter consistently, this will do me just fine. Alright, on to the buffer. This is a JP Enterprise silent capture system, standard weight. They make tungsten weights for these. I didn't see a need for that, and it's worked well for me. The biggest appeal for this was to eliminate that clangy spring sound you get from traditional recoil buffer setup, and it does that very well. Not much else to say about it. It does help with the smoothness of the recoil, which is probably actually a bigger pro than the sound, but that paired with the rifle length gas system provide an extremely light and smooth recoil impulse that I like a lot. So also highly recommend one of these. Alright, the trigger. Guess we should talk about this, huh? So this is a CMC 2-stage 2 and 2, so the take up is 2 pounds and the pull is 2 pounds. I like that it's a one-piece drop-in trigger, and I really prefer the flat-face triggers for long-range shooting. I like the shelf on the bottom. It gives me an anchor point to get consistent when I'm setting up and taking my shots. Overall, this is a really good trigger. I'm not really a trigger snob. If I shoot good groups, I mean, it doesn't have much creep. The reset is crisp. So really, my main concern is just the weight of pull to keep from disturbing anything else on my setup when I'm taking that shot. But yeah. Love this trigger.
Now for the optic, man.
This is an SWFA SS 10x42 mil quad, 1/10 mil adjustment. Now I bought this as kind of a budget rifle scope. I wanted to try out my first fixed power scope, and I fell in love with this thing, man. I'll tell you what. The reticle is a standard mil setup. It's a mil quad, so it doesn't have the traditional mil dots, but the subtensions are the same. It's a mil setup. They have diamonds that are see-through, so they kind of keep from obstructing whatever you're shooting at. The reticle is really, really fine, and by that I mean it doesn't obstruct the target at distance. At 1,000 yards, it covers roughly 2 inches of the target. The lines are 0.05 mils thick, so I like that a lot. The eye relief is good as well. On the higher powers, like a 16x42 from SWFA, which I have on my 6.5 Creedmoor, the eye relief on that is extremely tight, so this is much more forgiving. Other than that, the glass is clear, price point's low, and it's tough as nails. It's 50 BMG rated, waterproof, shockproof, and overall it's a really, really good scope for its price point. But hey, what's this scope sitting on? What you got? You got some rings there? No, sir. This is a Nightforce 1.125 Unimount with a 20 MOA taper. I really didn't need the 20 MOA taper, but it was the only one-piece mount that I could find in its price category, at least. I think this thing was around $300, that allowed the optic to sit so low to the bore. I also didn't have the tools to lap my rings at the time, and Nightforce claims to have very high tolerances where that's not needed. I still like to do it anyway, but it's proved pretty good. So I'd still recommend it as a practice, but this has been a really fantastic mount for me. Some people ask me, how do you get your rifle so stable? And I'll tell you, it's my bipod. This is a B&T Industries BT46 LW17 PSR Atlas bipod. This was one of the investments that I made that affected my ease of shooting probably the most. I have a ton of cheaper bipods and bags and rests, and I've had them throughout the years, and this was a major, major step up. Every aspect of this thing is pretty rock solid. It's got a quick detach mount, and it's very easy to articulate, and it locks down very, very tight. The knob on the bottom easily loosens and tightens to give you a really precise amount of cant when you're shooting at long ranges, and it gives a good amount of tension for that. Keep your rifle stable once you get level. And really, that's all there is to say about this thing. I love it. It's rock solid. It's a great bipod. The Suppressor. This thing is an Omega 300. It's very, very quiet. especially with this 22 cal end cap on here. It's titanium, which is nice. I haven't found a good wrap for it that I really like. So it being titanium, it cools down quicker than a steel suppressor. So I don't have to wait as long at the range before I throw it in my range bag to head home. It's very modular, which I like. You can add direct thread on here and just direct thread it without a muzzle device. But I have a few other rifles I throw this on, so the QD works for me. The end cap, you can take it off and put a 30 cal end cap on here. Most of my rifles I shoot are 223, so I usually leave it on, but you can also add a brake. So overall, it's very, very quiet, and I'm glad I chose this one. Well, there he is in all his glory. The Franken rifle, known as Thor. That's his name, Thor. Yeah, sounds like thunder, so Thor. This rifle wasn't really purpose-built from the ground up, like I've done with some of my other builds. It was pieced together over time as I found out what I enjoyed most at the range, and as I learned more about firearms and ballistics and precision shooting. And not all the components on here are my first choice or preference for each aspect of long-range shooting, but I like the compromise here. I think they form a really good compromise in the realm of reliability and precision, and of course looks. I mean, it performs well. It's a half MOA shooter pretty consistently, and it works well for my needs, and it just looks like a monster. Like a monster.
Someone told me once that ARs were like Legos for adults, and although I'm sure I'd still enjoy playing with Legos, I couldn't agree more. It's an extremely versatile platform, and with the advancements in technology that have been made from component manufacturers and the long list of precision barrel makers, you can get more than adequate results out of this platform. So go out there and experiment, find out what works best for you, and thanks for watching. See you next time. Oh boy, it starts again. It starts again.